Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Early Childhood Discussions, Conscious Conversations, the podcast of the Grow New Jersey Kids Technical Assistance Center North. I've had the pleasure of talking with Gary Romano, and we've got him on again today. So, billing practices can be a great way to increase your revenue and cut costs. In today's show, Gary is going to talk about billing practices that could help you through the pandemic and beyond. Gary's the CEO of Civitas Strategies, a management consultancy focused on nonprofits helping marginalized children and families. He's currently working on a project funded by the Henry and Marilyn Taub Foundation to help childcare providers in Passaic County navigate the pandemic. Specifically, his team is providing free technical assistance to help childcare providers increase revenue and decrease costs over the next few months. And in the spirit of We're Better Together, Gary is providing information, support, and resources to all of us throughout New Jersey. So Gary, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your generous nature in providing information and tools that we can all use to help us improve practices and keep ourselves going well through this pandemic. So you said business billing practices can be an opportunity to help childcare businesses. Can you talk about how billing practices can help?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think for most providers, right, and I don't want to say it was ever easy, right, to run a childcare business, but for many of you, it was about how do you get the billing done, right? That, a good friend of mine who is from Essex County always says, childcare providers go into the business because they love children, not because they love business, right? So many people took the easiest path. What takes the fewest amount of steps, right? Do I really want to have a fight with that parent who's overdue, right? Do I really want to pressure them? In some cases, I've even heard of larger organizations saying, when there was subsidy attendance, if we miss a couple here and there, it's okay because we have other revenue streams, et cetera. Right. But now in the pandemic, as you all know far better than I do, childcare providers are being stretched. Every dollar is absolutely critical. And you want to think about it in two ways, right? Not only in terms of every dollar you could bring in, but as we've talked about in a previous episode, you want to think about cash flow, right? So you may be owed $100,000. But if you're not going to have that till next June and you have to pay all your bills now, it's as good as having zero, right? So you need to think about how you keep cash on hand, how you can keep meeting your bills, right? By making sure there's enough money in your bank account, because there's not going to be a huge loan. We're not looking at, some large stimulus coming down tomorrow. So any way that you can to get those dollars in as fast as possible. I want you to think about numbers, but also velocity of that money becomes critical.
Right. Oh, yeah. I mean, that makes sense. You may be owed a big chunk of money that you're expecting down the line, like your subsidy payment that's coming in. But if your bills are due this month, you can't wait till next month when that money is available. So what are some ways to change the way that you bill if you're an early childhood program?
So a few ideas, right? So, first and foremost, think about if you're not doing it already, right? Or something similar, because some of you I know are doing similar ways, moving from monthly billing to weekly, right? So if you look at it, right, a lot of us do monthly billing because it's easy, right? And we say, here's the rate per month. However, right, if you actually look at how many days are in a given month, it averages 4.5 weeks a month, right? So what's happening is if you go weekly, you have the opportunity to catch about 6 extra weeks of funds a year. And parents don't notice this. And let me be clear, this isn't about like hoodwinking the parents, like, let's get this on. But it's also about covering your costs, right? So it's the reality is that your costs are happening daily, they're happening weekly, right? And that extra time is a real cost. And maybe in the past you were able to get away with it, but now, especially when you're trying to get every dollar you can, it becomes critical, right? Another thing to consider is requiring a prepayment, right? So we always bill after the service happens, or typically we do. A number of providers bill before the service happens, right? So they say, Lori, your child's going to be with us next week. The bill comes out on Sunday, even though the service starts on Monday. And that gets you 1 week ahead. So if you have a slow payer, it's that much faster to come in. It also means you're getting the cash in, right? Remember what we said about on the top of the call, right? You want that cash to come in so you can keep making your payouts, right? So that becomes another way. You should also think about what your policy is around shutdown. So, I know many of you did not have a policy for shutdown. I think there was one kind of in your head, right? So you kind of had this idea that, if you did shut down, maybe you'd use the deposit or something else, or maybe it just didn't really ever come to mind. But now, of course, it's come to the fore. And I know so many providers who were pained when they had to write checks for every one of those deposits, and when they had no money to do so, right? Because parents were leaving and the current policy was you get your deposit back, right? With a policy change, it could be, the reality is you have fixed costs, right? Whether the kids are there or not, your rent still continues. If you're in a home, your lease, if you're in a business, right? These things are real. So it becomes very reasonable to say, let's have a policy change where, when parents, they need to do something up front, right? And, that you can, in the event of a shutdown, keep it and be able to retain it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super. So, Gary, it sounds like you're really highlighting the importance of policies and having policies in place, and the need to really carefully look at your policies and revisit them. Like if you don't have policies, now is the great time to create them. And
Yes.
if you do have policies, now is a great time to look at them as a result of the pandemic. So thinking about what your policies are asking of parents in terms of payment and when you expect payment and how frequently you expect payment and what kind of a deposit you require and what happens to that deposit and what will happen if your program should need to close again in a situation like we've just experienced. So now that we've got that knowledge of how this has impacted us, we can think about moving forward proactively and intentionally for the future. So Gary, previously, I worked as the director of a large childcare center, and we had that situation of some parents being slow to pay. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we've all been there, right? Whether I have a small business too, right? That not everybody pays as fast as we want. And when it comes to childcare, right? You're the financial office, you're everything. And so being able to increase those payments is always important, right? The speed at which payments happens, right? Making sure you collect every dollar, but now particularly so, right? Again, just beating that drum around cash flow, you want to make sure you have the money, right? Even if somebody owes you $1,000, if you have to pay it out today to your staff and you don't have it, you could be out of business, even though you have the money owed you, right? So it becomes really important to make sure that you're keeping up on those payments. And so first and foremost, as you mentioned, policies are important. Have a policy in your handbook that's going to be clear to parents on what your expectations are. I know, again, a lot of providers said, I like them. It can take a little bit. I get it. And I'm getting by. Now it's a very different circumstance, right? You need to be clear with parents about what it's going to take. And remember, this is not about you being selfish, right? Or you being, the mean business owner. This is about you surviving to provide a service that they want and that the other families that you're serving want and need, more importantly, right? Nobody benefits from you going out of business. Nobody does. So this is as much about you doing what you need for your business as it is about you doing what you need for the other families you serve and even that family who might be behind. Beyond a policy, one of the other things we're hearing a lot of positive results with is adding electronic pay systems. So, I know many of you will take checks. You might have, in some cases, you're using QuickBooks and the ability to pay invoices on QuickBooks, but PayPal, Venmo, there are others out there, right? Zelle is another one where you have these app payment systems. Make it so quick to pay, right? One of the things that we've heard again and again is that so many times it isn't that the parents don't value your service or that they don't have the money. It's a matter of time, right? Just like you, there's only so much bandwidth they have. And by the time they get home after they pick up their kid, and they're like, I know I have to pay them, right? I know I have to pay them. But then the kid says, I want dinner. So then you serve dinner. Then after dinner, you're cleaning up. And you're like, I have to write that check out for tomorrow. But then something happens. Then you're getting ready for bedtime, right? And then before you know it's the next morning and you're hustling to get out on time and you never wrote the check. So these app payment systems not only make it faster for a parent where they can literally just do it with their thumb, right? But it can also happen on the spot. So for example, one provider in Passaic was telling me how when she added Venmo, she was able to say to a parent at pickup, hey, by the way, you're behind on your bill. We now accept Venmo. Oh, really? Done. And that was it. That was the entire collection process, right? Again, mom wanted to pay. She had the money. It was just a matter of convenience and speed, right? Not forgetting about it. So, not only, again, does this speed it up, but what we've also heard is a lot of the parents like it because it's easier for them. Right. It's easier than finding where the checkbook is, right? Where did my husband leave it? Where did my wife leave it? Right. Instead, it's, I know I have both PayPal and Venmo on my phone, right, at all times. So it's a convenience that you're also providing them. So remember that that's a way that you can speed it up a bit. That is easy, is something that they're going to be responsive to, and they might even see as a plus.
Right. Yes, I've been hearing from some childcare centers who are very happy with childcare management software and the ability to use that for tuition collection and to automate it so that it's just automatically every single time the payment is due. It can be something that comes right out of the parents' checking account. Now, I know programs feeling strapped financially right now, like thinking about how to invest in something like childcare management software. It just might not be in the budget at present, but I have heard people say to me that even though it wasn't an outlay initially, the way, especially for larger programs, the way they were able to get more up to date on the money coming in helped them and kind of offset the cost. So it's something, I think especially maybe for larger programs to consider, because as you said, it's all about making it easier and thinking about fewer pieces of paper, fewer checks, less paper going back and forth. When it is done electronically, it just seems so much cleaner and safer especially during this time of the pandemic. So you want to share any final thoughts you have, Gary?
Yeah, I mean, any small business I ever work with, right? I always tell them the same thing, which is invoice quickly, collect quickly. The faster you can invoice, the better. If you can get that upfront payment, right, do it. If you don't feel comfortable with that, if Friday or the end of the month, whenever those invoices are due, make sure they're ready to go out, right? Because again, you can have all the money owed you in the world, but if you don't have the cash on hand, you can go out of business, especially at a time where we're seeing a lot of variable costs, a lot of unexpected costs, like suddenly you have to quarantine a classroom, right? So that speed, the velocity at which money is entering your business has never been more important. So keep that money coming in, send those bills out quickly, have the collections conversation if you need to, right? If you can use a CCMS, if you can automate with a PayPal or Venmo in any way to automate that process, I think your parents are going to thank you for it. And at the same time, it's going to speed up that ability to get the money in. So again, velocity. If you hear one thing, velocity.
I love that. And I think that that's so important when we're talking about the thin profit margins that existed for most programs before the pandemic have become the thinnest of margins. And
That's
so
right.
being able to keep up with your expenses necessitates you keeping up with getting your payments in on time from your families. And as you said, it just, families get busy. And even if they, had every intention of paying you this morning when they dropped off, they were in a rush and that check can end up, sitting, in their pocket for days or weeks. So making it easy, I think, is really, really the key. Gary, do you want to share your website with our audience so that they know how to access the resources that you have available to them?
Sure, we have a few resources available. Probably even easier than going to our website would be is if you can email us at info, I-N-F-O, at Civstrat, CIVSTRAT.com. And you can access that also from our website, which is www.civstrat.com. But if you just send us that email and let us know you'd like some of the materials, we have a rubric that we've been using that has all the plays that we've been able to come up with Grow NJ Kids, with the CCR&Rs, with our work nationally that could help get you through the pandemic. We have some other resources around cash flow forecasting in English and Spanish, as well as some specific grants. We're happy to send any and all of that to you, whether you're a provider or if you're a coach and you want materials. Please feel free to use them. We know that people are having a really hard time out there, and any way that we can help, we're happy to do so.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Gary. I so appreciate your generous spirit in sharing all this information, the research that you've done, the tools that you've created. I think we've had some great conversation. We've talked about assessing and strategizing where you are. We've talked about ways to increase your enrollment and look for new streams of revenue. We've talked about grants and money that might be available locally at state or federal level. And now talking about getting that billing process buckled down with your current families. And I think it's all about communication, communicating to let people know that you're here, you're open for business, and you are here to serve the community. And then communicating with your current families and letting them know if there are some policy changes and some ways of doing business that you're implementing, and letting them know your why.
Yeah.
You may have been able to give parents flexibility with payment in the past, but now it's critical that you get paid on time because you want to be there to continue providing quality care for their children. So this has been wonderful. I appreciate so much that you come to share your knowledge and expertise with us. So thank you and have a great day.
Pleasure. You too.